Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Of course, as critic of the bill, I have critical questions, although I want to thank Senator Carignan very much for putting this issue on the national agenda. Your bill specifically excludes the sharing of hyperlinks. And I understand why that is, because there's lots of Canadian case law that says that a hyperlink is not a republication. But your bill would only come into force when people shared entire articles or substantial, significant excerpts of articles. That almost never happens. And when it does happen, it's very difficult to trace. A copyright collective like SOCAN can trace every play of a song and track down people who have used the music and require their royalties. Can you explain to me how newspaper companies, do you imagine that this would be where a company would have to find out that somebody's aunt cut and pasted part of something to Facebook? Or would you simply establish an understood royalty amount that would be automatic, even if copy wasn't being shared in that way?
Écoutez, sur la question des...
Well, look, when it comes to hyperlinks, that is a very interesting question. Originally, I excluded it because, to me, a link is just an address. But of course, sometimes there are contextual components that come along with the address, and those would deliver some of the substance. For example, if the title were included in the hyperlink. I've heard many comments and received criticism on that point, and I would be quite comfortable to modify it to include hyperlinks in the bill. And when it comes to full articles, the bill talks about a significant portion of the news article. And there is a legal precedent for that as well. So La Presse, Le Devoir versus CD-ROM, which was before the Superior Court in 2017, was a decision that found that the title is an important part of the news because the title is chosen precisely to attract attention to the article. And the Superior Court decision found that the title was an important part of the article, so it would also be covered under the protection for the right to remuneration. And of course, and you'll hear me say this often, once again, the bill creates a negotiation context between digital platforms and press outlets. So there is a lot of space for negotiation, a lot of room for negotiation to suss out those details and to ensure that the remuneration is there as long as there is a link to important parts of the news that was reported.
I'm sorry, I don't understand how this would work. I mean, I do not think that you can include hyperlinks because there is clear Canadian case law that says that a hyperlink does not constitute a republication. There are clear exemptions in the Copyright Act for fair use and fair dealing.
No, that's not it.
Which would make
mais c'est pas ça que je dis là.
But that's not what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is that if we do make the link between hyperlinks and people click on them, well, you know, technology is very advanced. So as soon as someone clicks on the hyperlink, it is possible to measure that click. And once the click has been done, it's possible to use technological tools to determine how much time was spent reading that text, how many seconds or microseconds were spent reading the text. All of that is measured.
Specifically excludes hyperlinks, so that wouldn't apply.
Ouais, je sais, mais...
Yes, I know. But what I was trying to say was the goal was to exclude them, but that I'm open to an amendment to include them, and I believe we should include them.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Senator Wu for his question because I think it clarified something for me and I hope for other people. So when a recording artist makes a CD, they sell the CD. They have copyright of that music. If I steal that music, I've violated their copyright. But they also license that music to bars and restaurants and gym facilities, and they have royalty agreements through SOCAN with radio stations. So they receive royalties for the reuse of their music, but they sell. All right. So this is the paradigm you're working with.
Exact.
But does that paradigm work for the news industry in a scenario whereby news organizations are sharing very proactively and indeed very aggressively sharing their content with web giants because they believe that that is how they will make money, because they will be able to monetize the clicks that they get to sell advertising on their own websites. And I know it is tempting and convenient to be angry at the web giants who have so much money and so much power and who curate what we see. But on what moral basis do we ask them to pay for what is being freely offered and given to them? I mean, the Australian model that forces people to the table and forces them to negotiate almost makes more sense to me because it's just brute force without an attempt to find a legal solution.
Bah, écoutez, ils ont...
Well, look, they still have a responsibility. They created a framework. They set out the rules of the game. And let's take the example of the Globe and Mail. So I pay for a subscription to that. I'm a subscriber to the digital Globe and Mail. And those articles are also pushed on social media. And so that's an investment formula. And if it's true that they would receive some of the royalties, well, that would be something added to the business model. I don't find anything really shocking about that.
But I guess what I'm saying is that the reason that news organizations share their content is to make money. They make more money by sharing their content, relatively speaking, than the companies do by monetizing it. Because as I think I explained in the chamber, the companies do really not make any money by monetizing the news. They make their money by having stolen the advertising market. So is it not cutting off noses to spite faces, as one would say in English? God help the translator who has to deal with that. Because, I mean, when I worked for the Edmonton Journal, our whole raison d'etre was to get as many platforms to share our links as possible. If we lost that source of revenue because companies decided not to share the links, we would have been in tremendous trouble.
Oui, mais là, à ce moment...
Yes. But in that case, that is interesting because that is exactly what the discussion would be in negotiations between the collective society and the digital platform to attribute a certain value to that. And as part of the negotiation, they would establish remuneration that would take into account the fact that they have a certain value and deserve a certain remuneration, and that would be part of those negotiations. And I'm convinced that that would be part of the same arguments in the Australian model as well. There would be the third-party arbitrator who would decide. It's an arbitrator in Australia. Here it would be the Copyright Board. So that will be part of the game of negotiating. I don't find that shocking.